Welcome to Tales from South Florida. I'm your host, Bill Monty. Small towns are often thought of as being the sole delight of states like New York, North Carolina, and, well, just a whole bunch of other places. Here in South Florida, it often feels like one large suburb, indistinguishable as you travel from city to city. But if you know where to look, you can find isolated and sometimes infamous villages propped up here and there. Join me, and let's take a talk down memory lane to explore Ojus, Hacienda Village, and Lazy Lake, the tale of the small towns of South Florida. Cue the music.
Let's take a talk down memory lane, 'cause the stories around here are just insane. Pirates World, the Sporto and Wolfies too, Palm Beach to Key West, that's where we grew. These are the tales from South Florida for you, with your host Bill Monty.
Hidden away in a little portion of Miami-Dade County is the small town of Ojus. If you travel in the North Miami area along Dixie Highway, you may have completely missed it and not realized that you had left one town and entered another. Ojus is only about 3 square miles long, making it one of the smallest towns per mileage in Florida. 2.5 of those miles are land. The other half, water mainly fed by the Oleta River. The average population of Ojus is about 16,400 residents as of the 2022 census. People have been living in the Ojus area, though, for thousands of years. Archaeologists have uncovered ancient sites at Arch Creek and along the Oleta River, which was used by early white and Native American settlers to travel from Miami to the New River in Fort Lauderdale. But it was in 1897 that a pineapple farmer named Albert Fitch named the area Ojus, after the Seminole word for plenty, or lots of, which is kind of ironic because there's not really a lot of Ojus. After the turn of the century, rock was discovered in the area that was ideal for road building. Many of the neighborhood lakes were created during the early part of the 20th century to support the construction of the area's infrastructure. But forming the town of Ojus has been a challenge. Voters initially approved the town of Ojus on April 12, 1926, only to have this set aside by the state Supreme Court due to boundary specifications not being valid. A second vote for incorporation was approved by voters on August 31, 1926. However, in 1927, the town of Ojus was abolished by the state as a municipal government and reestablished as a municipal corporation. Then in 1929, a court upheld the city council's refusal of the mayor's order for a charter election. Subsequently, the state passed a bill calling for the abolishment of the town, which was rejected by voters. In 1931, the state abolished the town of Ojus with voter approval on July 15, 1931. A court rescinded this on October 26 of 1933. And it goes on and on and on. In case you're wondering, Ojus is now considered a CDP, or Census Designated Place. And if, like me, you are unfamiliar with that term, a CDP is a statistical representation of a closely settled, unincorporated community that is locally recognized and named. CDPs are smaller to incorporated places like cities, towns, and villages, but they lack a legally defined boundary and active government. There were 2 landmarks that were created in the early part of the 20th century, but only one survives. In 1925, Carl Fisher, whom I spoke about in depth in a previous episode, constructed the Fulford Miami Speedway in the present Sky Lake neighborhood. The wooden racetrack was then billed as the world's fastest, but was unfortunately destroyed by the devastating 1926 hurricane. One of the region's most notable features, Grinnell's Park, was established in 1936 as part of President Roosevelt's New Deal programs. The park was named after Mr. A. O. Grinnell's, owner of the Ojus Rock Company. Those rocks just keep coming back, don't they? Mr. Grinnell's donated 110 acres of his property in exchange for naming the park after him. Over the years, the park has expanded to include a golf course and a boathouse, and even hosted popular musical acts during the 1960s, such as the Grateful Dead. Grinnell's Park was declared a historic site in 1983. But But as laid back and cool as Ojus is, many Broward County residents remember a small town that was neither of those things. Hacienda Village was founded in 1949. It is a now defunct town that was located in central Broward County, right about at the intersection of State Road 7, or 441, and State Road 84. Now, during the time that I was aware of it, this was one part of the county that you did not want to ever be driving in because it was notorious for its speed traps and whatever other moving violation could be concocted by the less than honorable justice system that was set up there. It may have been a small town, but Mayberry it was not. And while it did possess both the police and fire department, as well as various other municipal agencies, it also still relied heavily on Broward County for many services. It was disincorporated in 1984, allegedly having its charter revoked because an influential state representative had been given a traffic infraction. It was subsequently absorbed in the nearby town of Davie, Florida. It was touted that on a really cranky day, Hacienda Village speed trappers could issue anywhere from 400 to 1,000 speeding tickets before lunch. The mayor of Hacienda Village appointed himself the police chief, the fire chief, and the judge magistrate. He presided over some 18 police officers as well as nightly traffic court and apparently relished his reputation as a difficult person. Hacienda Village was composed of 14 mobile homes and 3 junkyards with a population that varied between 150 and 200 people. Residents were not taxed, as the town always had a healthy surplus of funds from all of those traffic fines, a large percentage coming from tourists who knew nothing about the town's reputation. The fines were a result of some fancy and obscure speed limit postings which were heavily enforced by highly efficient police officers. In August of 1970, the town stopped writing tickets on the 2 state roads while awaiting a ruling on their jurisdiction. And in October of 1970, the Florida State Attorney General ordered the town to stop writing tickets on the state roads, since all state roads come under the jurisdiction of the state. As with Andytown, which we discussed in an earlier episode called Growing Up in South Florida, Hacienda Village was crippled by the construction of the interstate system, and while it might be a dim memory now, it is a legend to those who were either ticketed or terrified of being stopped in Hacienda Village back in its heyday. For a much nicer small-town story, we head east away from Hacienda Village and start approaching Wilton Manors right off of Andrews Avenue to the tiny village of Lazy Lake. Lazy Lake, you don't have to worry about getting a ticket there because it has no police department, and if your house catches fire, watch out. It doesn't have a fire department. In the 2020 census, the population of Lazy Lake was 33. Lazy Lake was developed in 1946 by a real estate developer and contractor named Hal Ratliff, along with architect Clinton Gamble, who designed the original homes, and financier and accountant Charles H. Lindfors. They began the process of building the community around an old rock quarry, which later was filled with water and became the village's artificial lake. Lazy Lake received its name when someone remarked that that lake looked lazy and peaceful. I wonder why it wasn't Peaceful Lake. The goal was to build a community that was low-key, with lots of large trees providing shade and evoking an image of a street up north somewhere. The landscaping would be designed to allow residents privacy from neighbors and allow them some anonymity. When nearby Wilton Manors decided to incorporate as the city, it did the neighborly thing and asked the Lazy Lake's residents whether they wanted to be annexed to Wilton Manors. Lazy Lake residents decided to incorporate themselves as the village of Lazy Lake instead. By area, it is the smallest incorporated municipality in Broward County. It started with 13 homes on 13 acres. As of 1985, the village's annual budget was $7,000. But here's what's interesting. In 1995, residents agreed to place the entire village up for sale at $15 million. But nobody purchased it. It was on the market for 2 years, and the town even went on television news stations and shows on CNN and other shows like A Current Affair to help promote the sale. There was some interest from a Kuwaiti prince and, of all people, O.J. Simpson. but ultimately, no one bought the village. During 2008, a few residents on the village's north side wanted to disincorporate, secede, and get annexed and incorporated into the city of Wilton Manors. The reason the small movement failed was because most of the residents on the south part of the village wanted to remain a village. A recent drive down Lazy Lake's Main Street, in fact, its only street, showed lovely, if indeed aging homes, still removed from the busy life around it by all of that beautiful, lush landscaping. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to see that lazy lake. Thank you for taking this talk down memory lane with me as we looked at some of the small towns and villages of South Florida. As always, I ask you to please be sure to like and share and comment and subscribe. It really helps us grow our little podcast here. And if you have any comments, please go to the link in the show notes, or you can always write to me at talesfromsouthflorida@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to respond. Certainly, if you have a tale of a small village or small town that you grew up in this area that I haven't mentioned, I'd like to feature it in an upcoming episode. Until next time, my friends, this is Bill Monty with Tales from South Florida, reminding you to always be safe and be kind.
These are the tales from South Florida.